Okay, thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here, so привет and добрый вечер, right? These are the only two words that I know except for asking for pretzels. Я хочу бублик, right? Is that one? I have no idea why these are the only phrases that I know, but you take what you get. First thing I want to do to start is just to wake you up. This is a morning, so I hope you have fun. Seems like a wonderful conference, even though I didn't understand anything from the actual agenda except for my name. But maybe I should have learned Russian. It would have been great. So let's start it off with something I really like doing because I like getting pictures of myself. So let's do a crowd selfie, okay? So I want you to raise your hands. Come on, come on. I'm silly, you should be silly with me. Yeah, say cheese or pretzel or whatever you want. Bublik. Okay, so now let's get started. This session right here is called Don't Use It Because You'll Lose It. It's based on the fact that I was one of the original developers, Google developer experts that were assigned to the project for UX review for Google Play. But because I'm not a designer or a UX guy, I'm an engineer, I did analysis with developer tools, and I found that I can understand exactly how a rating for an app will go based on its network and battery usage. It's almost linear. It's almost, that if they're wasting this amount of battery, they'll get minus this amount of ranking point. If they don't support this network performance thing, they'll lose half a point here because users are picky. There are a lot of apps, there's a lot of Android development, and everybody has no patience. So if you disappoint them in the way that sticks them in their pocket or in their time, they're going to leave you. So I thought that even though it's not as technical as what I usually like doing, it fits a keynote far better because it's more important for your bottom line and it has relations with the technology. So that's what I decided to doing. So I'm Royi Benyossef. I've been an Android developer since 2009. I'm a community activist, speaker, and founder because I founded GDGs similar to the ones that you're doing, but in Tel Aviv and in Herzliya and a bunch of other places you'll never go to. I'm a mentor at pretty much everything that's called an accelerator in Israel, whether it's Mass Challenge, that's an American one, or the Google Launchpad in Israel that you probably heard of, or you should, and a bunch of others that you don't care about. I've been a Google expert technically since 2012, but the program has only been started in 2013, so you could say I predate the program. And the reason for that is that, not that I'm really, really good, but the fact that I knew the guy that actually started the program. So feel free to go and replace me. You'll find it very easy to do so. And the company who actually pays me money to do all the stuff that I'm doing is Samsung Next, and that's technically a VC. We invest in startups, but I made up a title called Ecosystem Relations Manager that actually means that they pay me to do this, to go to conferences, to speak, to create activities and events to help the local communities because they believe that's the way to go, not because it has anything to do with what we're doing, because money is an easy sell. So Samsung Nest, just in a few words, even though it's not really related to you because we don't have a presence in Russia, but if it is interesting to you later, maybe I can try and connect you to other people later on. So we go with software and services startups, no hardware, even though we are Samsung. We do early stage investments, seed to B rounds, do product creation, and we acquire companies for Samsung. And if you really want to, that's my email. Feel free to use it for other purposes as well. If you want help with something or connection to Google Teams or questions in Android, whatever you want to, that's my email, just use it. And now, getting started. Let's identify the problem. We're using apps everywhere. We're using them on the way to work, in the metro, or on the bus, or in the car. We're using it in the office. We're using it in the bar after work. We're using it at home. Now, all of these situations, all of these scenes are different. They have different internet connectivity, whether it's on Wi-Fi that we trust, a Wi-Fi that we don't trust, or 3G. It has different battery levels because either we're charging or we have the ability to charge, or we're on 20% because it's the end of the day and we just want to go home. All of these situations, they matter to us. They change our desires, but the applications don't know that. But the funny thing is that applications and developers such as yourselves have the tools to know the differences in the situations, but most developers don't use them because they don't know they exist, or they think it's too hard, or they don't understand the value. This entire session is to explain to you what the value is and how simple it is to make your app something that people will genuinely, will really look at the app and say, wow, this is really, really good, and I can't even understand why, because it's not in your user experience, but the application just works, and it's not wasting my battery, and it's not wasting my money, and I'm not waiting for it. And that's a very, very key value. The implicit or in the background value is what makes or breaks an application. So apps need data, duh. Wi-Fi is free in most cases. 3G LTE does not. And all of it takes battery, right? That's common ground. Everybody understands what I'm saying. But users don't like losing money in battery, and I think we've established that. But they do like user experience. They want fresh data all the time. They want never to wait no matter what. And they don't really care that it's difficult to do that and that. But don't panic. That's exactly what we're here. Third time that I said that, sorry. Internet is not everywhere. If you're going to work in metro, true story, I had a client, this is really not my first time in Russia, not my first time in St. Petersburg. I have had a very big client in Moscow, spent there for 3.5 weeks, don't speak any Russians. At the beginning, I couldn't even read the Cyrillic letters, and I had to use the metro to come to the office. I lived here for about 3.5 weeks, and I used Google Maps to get to the metro station, but your metro stations, while beautiful and effective, are huge, and there is zero way for a person who doesn't know where to walk in the metro stations. And Google Maps at that time, in 2015, did not have offline navigation. So I lost days in the metro system in Moscow. Now, that would not have happened if they would simply cache the info, like they do now, have offline navigation, cache the information, and allow me to know where I'm going, even if there is no internet. Same applied to your application if it is mission critical, if it is important for people on the go, or simply important for people to look at, I don't know, sports scores while they're on the metro. I have no idea. But that's the point. So, see, I didn't understand the sequence, so don't panic. We are here to help you do just that. Let's start with the battery. I didn't have a funny thing to say, so I just wrote a plain thing. Radio, we'll start with glossary. Glossary means that these are basic terms in battery usage that I want you to know because they're the basis of this portion of the presentation. So the radio is the part in the device that allows you to connect to cell towers and routers. It is responsible for the phone calls, the SMS, the Wi-Fi, and the 3G and whatever. The radio has 3 modes. There's the baseline modes, in which it does nothing, but it doesn't cost anything, because the radio is almost off and there's almost no power being used. I gave an average, because it can go down to 65, it can go up to 200, depends on the phone, but let's say 100. The radio download mode is when you've asked the application to actually download something, the radio is working at full power, like 4 times as much as the baseline, but it's working, you need it, and it's a short period of time. The problem is the idle mode. Idle mode almost does nothing because it finished downloading, but it's still pumped up from downloading, so it still drinks power, about 3 times as much as the baseline. Every time you wake up the radio, the device loses about 90 seconds of 3 times the baseline. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but let's consider the workflow. Phone is at baseline. App A asks to fetch something from the server. So the radio, think of it as a graph. The radio is baseline, and then it jumps. It takes like a second, and then it jumps to 3 times, and then it goes down. So it's like when you go to the hospital, the machines, the thing, similar thing. The problem is, the data is downloading, and download goes down to idle, waits 90 seconds, and then it goes down. So you're saying, okay, who cares? The problem is you're not the only app on the phone. There are many developers, and all of them are saying, who cares? So Royi, me, I put the phone in my pocket. I go about my day in the office. I'm having meetings. I'm answering calls. I'm writing code sometimes. So at 8:15, App A starts updating, as it does every hour. And App B at 9 also updates, because it updates once daily at 9 a.m. App C gets a Firebase Cloud Messaging update, so it updates at 9:07. 9:15, App A updates again. 9:35, App G updates every 2 hours, so it updates, and so on and so forth. A lot of apps are doing that. So by the time Royi checks his phone at middle of the day, I have about 55% battery. And that's not good. But that only happens because each and every app does, I want to update me. And I know that you want, the apps know that I want the freshest data that they have, so they update. But every time they wake up the radio, I lose battery power, and that's not as good. So what do you do? Possible solutions is say apps don't need internet at all. We'll do it all locally, but that's just stupid. So we'll simply need a way to use it more efficiently. And that starts in the very basic. In Android Lollipop, Google gave us a tool. It's a batching tool. Now, batching says Android took a step back and gave us a tool that's similar to iOS. Boo! In iOS, you don't manage your own internet. In iOS, you take your task and you give it to a system service, and that system service takes all the jobs and say, oh, that works together, this works together, and they decide when you get updated, which is stupid. In Android, they say, we'll give you as much rope as you want, use it any way you want. In some cases, developers use that rope to hang themselves, and that's a problem. So in Android Lollipop, they gave you another tool. They told you, you can use batching. So every app says, I wished to update every 60 minutes, every 90 minutes, every day at 9 a.m. And then Android takes all of these tasks and say, okay, if you wanted this, so we'll update you here and here and here. So instead of all these calls, you have less calls. Why? Because you have less calls that wake up the radio. So same data with less idle times, profit, because more battery. So if we start the day the same way, after it, you'll see that A and B were close enough to batch together, and C was close enough to batch together with A, because they knew we got the update from Firebase, and then they said, oh, but in 7 minutes, we know that that app is being updated anyway, so just wait 8 minutes, okay? So we lost 2 out of 5. Now, in real life, that's not 40% as you see here. That's close to 85%, according to Google statistics. And 85% of the calls is a lot of battery. Now, moving on, let's talk about Firebase Cloud Messaging. How many people here know what or have used Firebase Cloud Messaging? Wow, okay. So, raise your hands again. Who was there back there? So you get this one. And the few closest people, who are you? So you take one, and you take one. These are socks and foam arrow thing. I almost got arrested at the airport because of this thing. And then they showed it, and I said, it's sponge. I can do like this. I said, oh, okay. And they laughed and allowed me to go. Here you go, take this. It's very stupid, but I like it. I'm the only one who likes it. So, FCM Network Manager, the 3 APIs that you can use for batching is the FCM Network Manager. If you're using standard Android, you should probably use that. Why? Because it uses Google Play services, and that's okay, but it's backward compatible to Android Froyo 2.2. So you can support whatever you like and everything's okay. If you're not using only standard Android devices like the Amazon Fire, whatever, or some Chinese devices, or proprietary AOSP devices, etc., you can use the job scheduler, which is the base technology behind FCM Network Manager, but that only allows you to use devices that have Android 5.0 or above. The last thing that you can use is the sync adapter that some of you might remember from way old blog post 4 or 5 years ago. Now, it still exists, and it does exactly that. It's very, very, very efficient, but it's super hard to understand. I mean, I tried to implement it 3 times until I started, and I am the first or second Android expert out there, which probably tells you that I'm not really an expert, but that's okay. So it does exist. You can use it if you're using older devices and you still want batching. So you can use FCM push notifications in a whole different way. So you can use push receivers, because push receivers don't wake up the radio at all. It's almost the same as the baseline. It's the difference of 10 milliamps. And the server notifies you when something has changed. So you don't do the polling thing. You remember the Simpson scene of "Are we there yet? Are we there yet?" It's the same thing when you do when you're polling. So if the server actually pushes and says something has changed, now you do something, it saves you a lot of these calls. It saves you a lot of idle time. If nothing has changed, you cancel the call, no idle time and no downloading time, which is also significant or important. So if we take the improved version of before push notifications and we change the app A push, the gray one, is not a real download. It's just something that the server said something has changed right now. So out of 5 calls to begin with, we have 1. And again, standard statistics, standard device usage is a lot more than 80%. If all apps use FCM push and batching, we'll have about 97% battery saving in network only. So I hope you've seen the light. I have. And the last thing that I want to talk about is not really about your network. It's about the way most developers... Okay, I'm going to ask it in a different way. How many of you in your network calls check for connectivity? Ask if there's network or listen to the broadcast of network connectivity change. How many people? Okay. Yeah, I'm guessing that's more of you, but not all of you understand me because I'm talking too quickly. But the problem with that, and there are a few problems with that, is that whenever you do that test, especially if there is no connectivity, you're actually wasting more energy than if you actually downloaded something, because that is a very costly request. And a lot of apps are listening, the apps that are listening to the broadcast, which is supposed to be no energy at all, right? It's just whenever it's changing, I'm just listening, saying something's changed, and that's great. But analysis, Google analysis actually showed that most people are listening to that, but are not doing anything. And the problem is that when you list a receiver and it gets a message, your entire application wakes up and is loaded to memory. And when it's loaded to memory, the CPU is on. And the CPU, the 3 biggest threats to the battery are the screen, the CPU, and the network. I'm handling the third. We're talking about network. But what I'm actually talking about when you do system check with broadcasters that are sprung up to no reason is the number 2 enemy. So you're saying, but okay, I don't have any other choice, right? Well, you do. Android released API tests that are system API tests a long time ago. So again, I'm just going through what the benefits are. So searching for connectivity is most costly. App-level queries keep app loaded, and the CPU usage is running, so more battery usage. And the last thing is that developers usually do, it's not quick and dirty, but it's quick and easy and working. They don't use these complex algorithms like exponential backoff. That's even difficult to say. I'm not even talking about how difficult it is to actually implement. But if you'd use Connectivity Manager that Android actually released 2.5 years ago, you'd get all of these benefits because it's one service. If an app just asked if there's connectivity, you get the benefit. You know if there's connectivity. You don't need to test anything. It uses all of the benefits without you actually doing anything. So one batch check for all apps, not keeping apps loaded. If you're using schedulers like job schedulers, they use Connectivity Manager automatically, and they have exponential backup. So you save twice. You save because it's batched. You save because you're not polling for connectivity, and you're saving because you're not loaded into the memory for no reason. So moving on to another benefit of the battery is DOS mode. How many people here are compliant with DOS mode in their applications? Exactly. That's exactly the problem. So DOS mode was introduced in, one question. How many people here know what DOS is, DOS mode? Okay, hopefully the ones that are supporting the actual, because if you don't know, that will be really ridiculous. So I don't see how many people, but I'm going to throw it this way, and I'm going to throw it that way. Hopefully I'm not damaging anybody. Sorry. There's just socks, so. Wow, My dad would have been proud with that one. Okay, so DOS was introduced in Lollipop, and it basically means that when the screen is off, it's stationary. Stationary means not moving, just like my phone is right now. It's sitting on this desk, it hasn't moved in 5 minutes. The screen is off, and it's not connected to electricity. So that means that I'm not using it. So it is probable that I'm not going to read the newsletter for My Little Pony fan group that I'm part of, obviously. Now, DOS was, in Marshmallow, it was further improved. It was improved to detect walking. And what does that mean? It means that there's activity recognition in Android, starting from Lollipop, I think. And they can detect the movement of the phone in the pocket or in the bag or holding it in the hand. Screen is off, but it's moving. There's a trajectory here. So if they detect that the device is in walking mode, but the screen is off and it is not charged or charging, then again, it's in the bag or in the pocket, but nobody's using it. So, but what does it do? When applied, it blocks network communication. No matter how much you would ask for it, there is no communication outside of maintenance window. Now you're saying, okay, so that means that it forces batching, so I don't have to do anything, right? False. If you're using Job Scheduler or Sync Adapter or whatever I told you about, it works perfectly. It saves battery, you still get serviced, everybody's okay. But if you are not using it, it is very, very likely that you might crash or be non-responsive or being not updated at all. So you have to check whether that's the case or not on devices that are newer, that are Marshmallow or above. And how would you do that? You simply test with DOS mode, which is understandable. But if you're using Alarm Manager, for a good reason, by the way, and I'm going to explain that a bit, you can actually set the setters. If you're a calendar app and you need, or a medicine app saying to someone you need to take your medicine right now, you need to be precise. So you can ask for it. But any application that sets these is reviewed by Google Play. And if they think that your case is not strong enough, they'll revoke you. And sometimes they're not even going to tell you. So it is very good to be proactive. If you need that, approach Google Play. Send an email saying, this is my app. It uses these flags for a reason. Google has a very good point. They're saying we don't want people to use this as a backdoor, to just have an alarm manager set on this for no reason because it's easier. So before DOS, we had this. I went to sleep at 11. All the apps updated whatever they wanted to do. I woke up at 5:30 in the morning because I wake up at 5:30 in the morning. Really, I have no idea why, but really. And I only have 23% battery, so I cannot start my day. But after DOS, I have about 40% battery. These are made up numbers, but you get the point. I can start my day. I can come to the office and then charge my phone. I can do whatever I want to. I have a phone, and that's the most important thing. It's not just a device to play games and have apps with silly messages. It's a phone. Some people need it to navigate. They need it to talk to people. So if you use it for the wrong purposes, that's not good. And they're trying to help you to keep it as a phone, because if it is a phone, people will enjoy it for the apps as well. It's not the primary reason for most people, I know. Moving on. Let's circle back. We started with battery, and we said the battery using the radio more efficiently is something that we want. So less calls means less idle mode time. Covered that. Right, we understood, right? If not, ask questions now. Aha. So either you're bored out of your mind or you don't have questions. I'm going to assume that I'm good enough that you understood everything. We need to see how we handle download mode time and how we improve UX while improving download mode time. So let's start with polling. That's the scene I mentioned earlier. Calling the backend, if nothing changes, is wasteful because there's more idle time. And most people re-download things over and over and over, even though 80, 85, 90% of the data is exactly the same. Why? Because it's easier. Why version? Why do anything? Just download it again. Who cares? Well, people care because redundant download time is wasting the battery and data plan. And data plans are expensive in a lot of places worldwide. I don't know how it is in Russia, but in a lot of places worldwide, it's very expensive. So you need to find something better. So let's start with optimizing the methods. Freshness headers is something that has been around for ages. It's very old, it's a proven technology, it's very easy to implement. Basically, it means that you ask the server for what's your freshest update, what's your freshest data. And then it gives you a date, and you say, if this date is newer than what I have, I'll download. So your request is a lot smaller. So the download time is smaller than actually updating everything, and it might be exactly the same and you don't know. So that's good. Easy implementation because everybody knows how to do it. It's almost nothing to actually implement it. But it's still polling. You're still doing the operation. Idle time is still a problem. Using Firebase Cloud Messaging Push, where the server pushes until you update now, is better. A good performance, no idle, no download, but it is a change. If your server is with Firebase, it's relatively easy, but I think most of you do not have their servers on Firebase. So you would have to build a bridge with Firebase Cloud Messaging, and that's a pain. And you'll have to argue with the back-end developer guy that he needs to do it, and he's going to say, just do your job, you're a front-end guy, stop managing my job, and I know it happens all the time. So it is harder to implement, but there's a good benefit into it. What I'm suggesting is that if you do that, let's go further. Firebase released what is called as a real-time database. Now, there are a few other companies who are doing just that. And the real-time database, I mean, I tried it. I built a project to see how it works, and it sounds great. They handle both caching and update for you, almost in real time. And that's, if it works in production as well as it did on my project of My Little Pony group fan site, no, just kidding, it's great. But I would advise you, I would suggest that you'll go and check this out. If it's as good as it was for me, it might be good for you. But again, massive change on the back end. In payloads itself, instead of downloading everything all the time, which is wasteful in download time, why not just download the difference? That would have you have a local version. So you will have to have local caching. And that's a lot of work. But you know what? That's good. Because that local caching is exactly how you would support offline mode. How you would support your users when they're using the metro or going up the elevator or just sitting in their crummy office where they have no Wi-Fi because they're in basement 4G. I don't know. I don't know people's life. I just know mine. But diff-only is a segue to offline support that I think you need to think about. gzip compression is another way to go. Well, you compress the actual payloads from the server. Now, it's a bit more annoying because it increases the downtime. From the time that you ask for something from the server until the time that you actually see it on screen, it's longer because they compress it and you need to uncompress it, and it's annoying. But there's a security thing. It's a lot harder to spoof you. If people take you know what spoofing is? How many people know what spoofing is? When they look at your HTTP request and then they can see your payload and they can steal information, gzip makes it a little bit more difficult. Not that much, but a little bit more difficult, so it's another thing to think about. But if you're already doing gzip, I'm going to suggest something else. How about flat buffers? How many people here have heard about flat buffers? Not too many. Okay, flat buffers is Google technology, but it's so good that Facebook, of all companies, are using it for Facebook. It's using a binary stream to encode your data, so it's a lot smaller. So it's, if I remember correctly, it's 85% less characters to represent the same data. So it's safer, and there's no compression, decompression things, so it's a lot faster to decode and put on screen. But it's terrible to develop with, because if something doesn't work in the app, what's the first thing that you do? If you didn't change anything and suddenly there's a bug, the first thing that you would do, anybody has any idea? Anybody want to try? First thing you do is look at what the server sent you and say the backend guy is stupid. First thing, I guarantee to all of you. And that's what you can't do with flat buffers and gzip, because you're seeing binary. You have no idea how it goes. So that's kind of annoying. But you can still blame him, and then it's your problem. You find it out. But it's still superior if you're interested. If real time is that important to you, this is what I suggest. This is what I did in my last job. My last job, we developed an OTT television platform with Svisnoy, a company called VidMine, that, by the way, failed completely. I wasted 30 million of my investors' money, and the company went bankrupt, so I'm a terrible entrepreneur. But we did do this, so that was fun. Last thing is segmentation. Most backend developers only know how to service websites. But paging and indexing is very, very different for a good mobile experience. Now, if you're able to convince your architect that is a good cause, because companies do mobile first. It's not even new right now. It's so not new that in last I/O they didn't even say mobile first. They said AI first, which makes sorry. I'm sorry, Google, because you gave me so much in my life. But AI first makes absolutely no sense. Mobile first makes sense because people actually see it. AI first makes no sense. But it's a good catchphrase. So if it's so old that they replaced it, your architect is supposed to understand that paging and indexing and segmentation is supposed to go into the mobile stage. How much time am I wasting on you? Okay, I still have time. Yay. So these are the payload changes and the way that you're supposed to change it for network. Now, let's go with events. I told you you'll have tools to understand the events of where your application and your users are. This is what we're doing with it. So, MISC device listeners that exist since Android 1, pretty much. So, screen state, on or off. Easy, right? On means that someone is using the phone. Off probably means that they're not, unless they're psychic or something. Network state. If you're on 3G, then you're paying money. If you're on Wi-Fi, you're not paying money. And if you have no network, then I have no idea what you're doing. Battery states. Okay, meaning above 30%, low 20, 30%, and charging, so you don't care. Dock state, meaning if you're in a car or on your desk and you're charging, there's a dock of some sort. It means certain things regarding the usage and the application. Second thing, a little bit newer, again, 2 years old. Most people don't use it. Awareness API. How many people here are using the Awareness API? Exactly. I already gave you one. I can't give you again. So it gives you activity recognition that started off separately in Google Play services. Activity recognition is the same way that they discovered walking by me walking very silly. They can detect whether I'm walking or running or cycling on a bicycle or a motorcycle, driving in a car, or on my couch, stationary. Location allows you GPS location, which is great, but it also uses Google Places to tell you you're in a supermarket parking lot, and that's good. If you want to deduce that I'm going to the supermarket, but it's not that good if I'm just passing by. Again, difference in understanding all of these parameters. Physical webs is with beacons nearby, is mostly cool right now, not that useful, but still cool. And headphones, it can tell you whether the headphones are plugged in or not to the device. Yes, this is the one thing, it's the silliest thing on earth, but this is the one thing that all of you just open your eyes and said, really? There's an API for that? And there's one thing I want to tell you about that. Yes, that's real. And take that, iPhone users, you can't do that. Yeah, they have no headphone jack. Awareness API, because it's part of the Google Play services, is supported from Froyo 2.2. Only if you're using Google Play services, so an Android device, and the beacons thing is only supported from 18, but as we said, it's not 100% useful yet, at least as far as I've seen. Maybe you have wonderful uses for it. I didn't see anyone. Permissions, it's pretty light, so find location. If you're using location, that's fine. Activity recognition is understood now. It's basically, it's not one of these scary permissions that we want to access your contacts. You're saying why? And you know as developers that you want to access someone's contacts sometimes just for something stupid like the number of contacts or the idea of the phone. Irrelevant, but people see this permission and say, oh my God, he's trying to steal my grandmother's number. I don't know, what would you do with a contacts list? But still. Headphones and time, no permission, because it's useless enough for people to need no permissions for. The outputs could be snapshots saying, what's my current state? I'm riding a bicycle in a supermarket parking lot with the headphones on. It is possible that I'm retarded, but it's most likely that I'm doing either I'm riding for sports or I'm cycling to the supermarket to do my groceries. Both of these things are relevant if you want to advertise, or if you want to change the network connectivity of your phone, or if you want to do something, because you have information. You can use it if it makes sense. If it doesn't, then don't. A second thing is a fence. You can put a fence, theoretical fence, just an FYI, around a business. If you're reaching a perimeter of your working place, you can say, oh, I've reached work, so I'm going to block specific contacts so I don't want them to call me, like your ex-girlfriend. And I'm going to download the working flow and the tasks for today, so I'll get notifications because I have 1, 2, 3, 4 tasks and I don't want to forget anything. You can do this with the awareness API, and it's pretty easy right now because the API is very good. Other miscellaneous is that you have time, calendar, schedule. So you have all of these data points. Now I'm going to give you examples on how to use it to make sense and hopefully make you laugh. So on Wi-Fi, feel free to fetch more because it's free. And if you're connected to Wi-Fi, you're usually in a place that you're familiar with. So you might have access to electricity. If you're fetching, you can fetch a little bit more data for later, but only if you can cache it. And you need to cache it. Don't just download stuff for no reason. It's just not good. Unmetered networks needs more information. So if the battery is charged completely or 90% or is charging right now, go nuts, do whatever you want to, because if you're connected, you probably have Wi-Fi. You need to check that. And there's no problem. If you're under 50%, you need to start looking around and seeing, maybe I don't need to update that guy about the wooden clogs sale on Fifth Avenue in New York. Maybe he wouldn't want it because he's in Russia. If you're under 20%, only update yourself fiercely if it's something that's very important right now. Navigation apps, or I don't know, an important message from someone, but you need to be aware of the severity. Activity, if you're walking, running, or driving, sports result might not be the best time to update right now because you won't look at it. I mean, if Man United won and you're on a bicycle, I don't think you care. But navigation music app, use a user notification saying maybe you have less battery right now and you want to stop, or be aware that you need to turn right, etc., etc. Is in terms of activity. If you just know the activity and you're on the go, meaning that you're walking, running, etc., you need more information, you need more input. But if you're on the couch, meaning that you're not moving, you're on your home Wi-Fi and you're charged to the electricity, do whatever you want. I mean, it doesn't hurt anybody. You're not costing anything, so just go for it. Now, if the battery is low, a good idea would be to give the user a choice, saying, I think that you do not have enough battery and I'm not too important, so you might consider charging the phone or doing something. That's good, that's nice, let's consider it. You could try decreasing activity if you know that you're not important, unless you're mission critical. If you're on Wi-Fi, bad idea would be to update everything. Good idea is to update more, anything that you'll use later. It was important enough for me to use twice. And I want you to think about that, because I saw an app that every time it saw Wi-Fi, it downloaded everything. Everything, useless information that nobody cared. Every time you charge your phone, it is time that I come to the office. I only have like 7% battery. I put the charger in because I have like 15 minutes to charge as much as I can, and then Google Play updates all the applications, and I have less than I started with. It's not good. You need to think about the situations that could happen. Oh, this is my favorite. User running with headphones, which is something that uses the headphones API. I had to think 2 days until I found something. So you might suggest start playing running playlists, because they're obviously doing something. They're doing sport. Bad idea would be to fetch data for a news app, because again, nobody cares. But if you're running in an alley without headphones at 3 a.m., at 3 in the morning, then it's probably not wise to start playing a playlist, because that person is obviously running from someone. But it's a good idea to sound alarm, or maybe suggest calling the police. So, see the difference? Very similar activity. Running, headphones, everything's the same. Very different results. So, questions? Oh, I'm not done yet. I'm seriously not done yet. Just 2 seconds. I'm going to finish it with something spiritual. This person, who knows who that person is? Okay, that doesn't count, dude. Here. Okay, it doesn't work that good. So this is Larry Page. He's one of the founders at Google. Now, at 2013 I/O, I was in the crowd because I'm a Google expert, and they give you tickets for that. Yes, Google Expert's a good program. You should apply. And he went on stage, and his voice was terrible. I mean, he really had a terrible voice, and I made fun of him because I'm a terrible person. And I felt really terrible because they told me he had throat cancer afterwards. But the important thing is that regardless of his voice, which was not charismatic, after 2 seconds, he just made my skin all goosebump. He said the best thing possible. He said the most unbelievable products that will change the market and will generate a lot of money, but also change behaviors, human behaviors, because they will make humanity better, were not yet created in our lifetimes. These products will only be created by people of vision and execution, people that know how to take good ideas and make them work best, people like you and me. Thank you. Now I'm done.
Thank you, Roy, for your awesome talk. I personally like it. Do you? Okay, feel free to ask questions, and if you have problems with English, you can ask me in Russian, and I can translate it for you. Roy. Okay. Okay, Roy, you can choose questions from person you like.
Okay, 1 second.
But you have to look to them.
What? Yes. You're the only one.
Thank you. Very great tips to reduce the battery usage. But before we will implement it, we need to measure it. So, what are the tips to measure the battery usage on the end users?
It's actually very simple. There's the battery historian, which is an immensely powerful tool. It tells you exactly the APIs and what was used and what you do with it. And I recommend using it on all apps. But if you combine that with either Espresso, in case anybody doesn't know, is the white box automation tests for Android. So if you use it with Espresso, it's very powerful because you can take a use case, a working flow, a user story, and you can run that user story. The user opened this screen and pressed this button and did this and did that. So you can also do that on a device that's running in the office for 2 days and just mimic what you would do with the phone and then download a historian. So you know exactly what actions took place and you know exactly who to blame, if it's your app or it doesn't. One great thing about the Google Experts program is that I'm not an employee of Google, so when they do something that's silly, I can call them up on that. So when we did this test on a device, it was 2 years back, the single worst application on the phone was Google Play magazines. And I can understand that because bugs happen. And Google's a wonderful company and they're doing their absolute best, but sometimes you mess up. Now, they can mess up because they're an enormous company, so they have an excuse. Most of you do not. I hope that answered the question. Yeah.
Okay,
this is my last
questions?
one.
Okay.
Take it. Yeah.
It's him. Oh.
You wanted.
Please assist
you
us.
your
My question is simple.
No, wait. Microphone is near.
Yeah, so my question is how can we determine is your user is going by bicycle or, for example, by car? That's it.
It's very easy. You just open the API for Google search for or Yandex search activity recognition in Android. The API is very simple. You just add a permission, you add it in your manifest, and you ask it. You ask, what's the activity? And it will tell you driving or cycling. Cycling means bicycle or bike. Driving means car.
I suppose the question was about how Google determines whether it's bicycle or car.
Oh, sorry. So this is a cluster of sensors. It has I don't remember the names. It has the one that tells you what's the direction. It has the one that tells you what's the direction like this, 9-axis direction. The movement is very simple. When you're on a bicycle, when you're riding, your movement is like this because you're cycling. You're moving if you're driving, it's most likely to be in pocket but moving. So it is most likely that you're either driving or a passenger. It's basically the same for them. That's why Waze, if you're using Waze, when you're trying to click, you're a passenger and they tell you it's not wise to search for it while driving, that's how they do it. Because they know that you're moving too fast to be walking.
Just by speed?
Speed and the type of movement.
Okay, thank you. And I think we have one more question, and after that you can catch Royi.
Okay.
So thank you for your speech. It was clear. And speaking about battery and radio, I'm interested to know what do you know and what do you think about some alternative tools, just like nearby API? Thanks.
I love talking about the Google tools because I know that they exist everywhere. I think that if you test a tool and it is better in any way than the Google one, if it's easier to integrate, or it's working on more devices that make sense to you, or it's, I wanted to say cheaper, but it can't be cheaper because these are free, but or it detects more activities. There's a very big difference between cycling and riding a bike, an e-bike, an electricity bike. Google can't determine that right now. If you find something that does, that's wonderful. It all depends on what it gives back. I see no con to actually using external to Google, except for that you will have to continue updating it. Because using these APIs are updating it for you in the Google Play services, which, by the way, is also a bad thing, because if you're not keeping your code up to date, it might break it. So there is no right or wrong answer. And I think we're out of time, right?
Yeah, man. Thank you, Roy.
Okay.
One more applause.